nails down to the nub in the fourth quarter. I don't know what they're doing.
I don't know what Dallas is doing. They just don't click. I think they thought, we'll come back out here and we'll click like we did last year, but they don't have a running back.
Well, they don't have a defense. It's
Nope.
like the defense just doesn't show up in the first half
Nope.
at all.
And Dak can be so wildly off.
So they always it seems like these days they always finish the day of football by showing the Chiefs game at the end. And you watch, I watched Baltimore and I've watched some of that. Obviously we had the church business meeting. We'll talk about that in a second. And I watched these clips from other games, and then you watch Mahomes, and just every ball's like right in the guy's hands, and it's just like perfect. And you're like, what are we doing here? Why can other guys not do this?
He's so overshot his receivers at
Dak
times.
did, yeah.
It's just kind of like, golly ding dong, you look like a rookie, out here.
I think he needs to grow his hair back out. He's gone for like the shiny, shaved, and I was like, oh, he must be going bald. No, he's not. He's still got a great hairline. Like, why does he not just grow it out? Just let it fly, Dak. That's my advice to you.
Maybe that's the change the Cowboys need.
Just that Dak should grow his hair.
Dak,
Ezekiel Elliott should cut it all off and give it to Dak as locks of love. That'd be interesting because he's really got it going on.
Oh, golly. I think that the Cowboys are cursed until they get a new owner.
Yeah, that might be true. Well, did you see? This made me laugh so hard. Did you see that the Falcons owner inducted himself into their own Hall of Fame?
No.
Arthur Blank. This would be a great sermon illustration.
It sounds like it.
He inducts himself into the Ring of Honor. And they throw this huge celebration. There's all these lights. And the people are like, wait, you gave this award
You gave this award to yourself? Yeah.
You're the owner. It's supposed to be somebody else.
Is that not hilarious?
That made me laugh so hard when I saw that. Oh, boy. Well, football is just wild. You can't predict anything, especially when when most of the players don't really play the preseason.
Yeah.
These first 4 games, you don't know what's going to happen.
No.
You can listen to these people like, here's what you should bet on, here's who's going to. They never know anything. People don't know anything. So, that's why this is why we got a greater hope, right? We can small talk about football.
We can.
There's so much.
It's a decent distraction. Football.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to watch.
Yeah.
The more important news of the day yesterday. Well, we had a great Sunday morning service, and we had a really positive business meeting.
It was great.
Too.
Well, I've never had anything but positive. Really, my whole ministry, but here that's.
I got to tell you that one offline. I'll tell you that one time I got into a fight.
Yes, my wife last night came. You've got to find out what that was about. I'm dying to know. It's got my curiosity.
That was like my second. Some people will remember it. That my second business meeting here, I actually got into a little bit of a kerfuffle. And after that, my wife swore that she would never go to another business meeting. She said she'll never show up. Show up for another one. But we didn't have a pastor. And everybody did what was right in their own eyes.
Yeah. Sounds biblical to me.
So that was the second business meeting, but I've told you the story of what happened in the first business meeting.
They got to tell you about your hair. Well, I heard about that before I ever came here. I heard about that way back.
Larry Dillard. Have you seen him recently? I know he's
no,
pretty much
his health has declined. Yeah, it really has.
I need to give him. I owe him a phone call. I love that man so much. He lives right down the road from me. We live in the same neighborhood.
I didn't realize that. I always come into his house from a different way.
Well, you go. It's right off Valleydale Road, but if you go further into the neighborhood, down that way, we live up the hill a little bit. What were we talking about? So we had the business meeting in the evening. Well, let's start there. So that was, it was a little bit longer than we thought it was going to be, but that's just because we had so many reports.
Yeah, we did.
And all the reports were so positive. None of the reports went long. They were all really quick, but it was all like, we did this and this and this, and a bunch of people got saved. And then the next report, we did this and then a bunch of people got. it was really cool just to hear about.
Yeah, it really was.
I was sitting with Dylan. I was like taking notes. I was thinking through it. I was like, man, this is just really, really cool. And we got to introduce Dylan. You know, I didn't realize how many new staff members we had.
Yeah,
too.
Corey is new. Dylan is new.
Is it JC? Who's the new? I met her one time.
I did too. She's a secretary for.
It starts with a C.
Okay. Well, my apologies. I just
there on the tip
just
of my
blew
tongue.
that.
Casey.
Casey.
It's Casey.
Casey.
Okay,
Yes,
I got that.
Casey.
I got that wrong. Sorry, Miss Casey. But yeah, I met her. She seems great. But yeah, it's just the church is growing.
And
the
Amanda
staff is
Tuck.
changing. That's right. Amanda Tuck came on staff. She's working with special needs.
Yeah.
That's a really big deal. Most people know Amanda is singing on Sunday, but she
boy,
also
yeah.
directs the children's choir along with some other women. And
She does everything so well.
She really does things with excellence. She's going to do a great job with the special needs ministry. And then Owen got up there, chair of the finance committee, and said we're already giving over budget this year, which that was like, wow, I was just blown away by that.
Yeah, and of course we're underspent.
Yes.
We're trying to work on that.
Yes, I actually saw that and immediately got the credit card out and just, well, I'll show you, saying that I'm frugal.
Oh golly.
And then we didn't even talk about yet yesterday morning, just having Iglesia.
Yeah,
This was really
it's so
cool.
much fun to have them in there. You know, they just add something to the service. And I hope to goodness Raul was able to keep up with me in interpretation.
Well, I can't remember if I told you this last time, but whatever that channel is that when Iglesia is with us, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but that we have a cell phone app that they can put in their headphones and they can listen to a live translation.
Right.
But whatever that channel is in the soundboard, it goes right into my
Does
ears.
it?
Yeah. So I go to pray at the end, and if I accidentally have my headphone in, I'm hearing a live
You're hearing yourself in
Yeah.
Spanish.
It's really
Yeah.
strange. So I have to take my headphones. But yeah, he was keeping up. It wasn't Raul though. It was a different. And they said Raul was out. And I meant to meet. It was a man's voice. I meant to meet him. Sounded young. So anyway, they've got a lot of good volunteers
Yeah.
in there too. Andres is just doing a really
Great
great
job.
job.
Good job.
Really grateful for him. And that story from his family, we're going to post that on YouTube sometime this
Good.
week. Wow.
Good.
Super powerful.
Good job editing that.
It was actually Brody that did that one.
Oh, well, okay.
I'll
Well,
let Brody know. I'll take
whoever,
it.
it was good job. Good job on editing that.
Yeah. So that was it was a really good day. And then you came out and you're finishing out Genesis chapter 39, and you really went, and you kind of told us this. You went a little bit of a different direction with it because you said, "I'm going to do more teaching than preaching today."
yeah.
Now, for the uninitiated, could you explain when you say that? Because I think a lot of people don't necessarily know the difference. But when you say I'm doing more teaching than preaching, what do you mean?
Well, I'm doing less exhortation and more information.
Got it.
That's the simplest way to put it.
And it was a lot of information.
It was a lot of information because I want you to have the mindset going into chapter 40 and to understand, this is a young guy and he's going to be in prison for a fair amount of time, and yet he comes through that having, it's such a trite expression, but it's so apropos. He blooms where God plants him at that time.
He does.
And my comment was, learn to adapt to the place where God places you. Learn to adapt to the place where God puts you. And that's what he keeps doing that. He keeps adapting. He keeps, he adapts to being sold into slavery. He adapts to being sold to Potiphar. He adapts to all of the responsibility that Potiphar places on him. And when he's thrown in prison, he adapts to that.
So let's talk about where that is before we talk more about the application. Because you went back to the original language, which is so important, and you talked about how when it says into the jail.
Yeah. The
It's
word jail there
round house.
means a round house. dug deep. It basically means below the ground level. It's below ground level.
And you were able to get specific about which roundhouse this was, and it was the one that most likely belonged to Potiphar.
I think so. And I base that on that was not an unusual thing.
Right.
That,
Especially for a high official like
yes,
that.
for an official like that, it was where the king's prisoners were confined.
Yep.
So that's a specific place. You know, anybody that did anything deemed unlawful toward the king, they were put in this special prison, which happened to be, I think, the dungeon underneath the house of Potiphar. Because if you go to Caiaphas, they know where Caiaphas's house was built.
Talking about the New Testament.
In Jerusalem,
Yeah.
yes, in the New Testament. And Jesus, of course, he ends up, there that night. He was arrested and he's put on trial before the Sanhedrin. And then he's put into a dungeon, a prison. Well, underneath the house of Caiaphas, there's a dungeon and there are cells there. In fact, there's even a part over the doorway into one of the cells where there are holes carved through the rock that you would throw a rope through and tie a man's hands up.
Wow.
And you could beat him.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
there you could flog him in that place. So it's obvious there what the place was. And so that was natural. The Sanhedrin would try somebody, they would throw them into prison before they would execute them, or could take them to the Romans to execute them. And so it was under his house. And I think the same thing, because when you come to chapter 40, verse 3, listen, so he, that is Potiphar, or Pharaoh,
Yeah.
put them in confinement in the house
Yes.
of the captain of the bodyguard, that's Potiphar,
Yeah.
in the jail, in the dungeon, in the roundhouse, the same place where Joseph was imprisoned.
So you make the connection back to how Potiphar was more likely angry at his wife
I think so.
than he was at Joseph.
Yeah.
But of course, he has to side with his wife. He has to keep up appearances, but he does so while also keeping a close eye on Joseph.
I think that's why he puts him there. This was for the king's prisoner. Well, Joseph was not the king's prisoner. He was Potiphar's prisoner.
But he makes an exception.
And Potiphar could have just executed him outright.
He was the executioner.
He was the executioner. And according to Alfred Edersheim, he was the chief executioner. That's what it meant to be Pharaoh's, the captain of the bodyguard. But anyway, I think he puts him there in the prison underneath his house so he can keep check on him. And I did make the comment in one of the services where I said, you have to remember, Joseph is the goose that laid the golden egg for Potiphar.
Right, right.
So even Potiphar didn't want him to get too far away,
Yeah.
because I am certain he was still going to use him, at least for informational
Sure.
purposes. But there in the prison, we're told the Lord was with him, extended kindness to him, gave him favor in the sight of the chief jailer, and blessed him. Whatever he did, the Lord made it to prosper.
That just fleshes out the story in a really reasonable way that makes sense and is also in keeping with how the Lord continues to prosper him, regardless of the circumstances
Right,
around him.
that's right.
So you made the case then that obviously, even though the Lord was prospering him, the Lord is with him, the Lord never departed him, this is still a very different environment. It's going to be uncomfortable. There's going to be periods of suffering, and you were talking about the time of preparation for Joseph, and then how that applies to us as a church. I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, well, you wonder what in the world, why does the Lord allow this to happen to this poor guy? I mean,
Right.
It's like he can't buy a break. So the Lord allows all of this to take place, and they throw him in prison. And my thing is this: God never wastes an opportunity. And it's there in that place that I think God is using that as a place of preparation for what God's going to do with Joseph in the days to come. Very gifted guy,
Yeah.
very talented guy, but you know people that have been talented musically. You know people that have got a tremendous gift musically, But preparation doesn't do anything but really make them better. Harnesses to the full extent their gift and their ability. And that's what I see. It's like God is fine-tuning Joseph while he's in this place.
And we have to be careful because going into the application, there's so many gifted people that they won't take the time.
No, they will not. You know, I find extremely gifted people that a lot of them will not.
They won't
yield themselves to the place of preparation. And it's sad because of what they could do with all that giftedness.
Well, and that one hit me right between the eyes because I remember in college showing up and I could tell that I was better than some of the other players and singers. But I watched several of them surpass me just because they were willing to work harder than me. And
I wanted to talk to you about that. No, you're right. You know, it's the same thing.
It's the same. No, I remember. It still stings a little bit because I had not developed the work ethic, you know. And then also people are gifted in different ways. You told that really vulnerable story about, you know, how you've studied Greek. You've put more time into Greek than a lot of people have into English. Yeah. And yet it still eludes you from time to time.
Oh my gosh, not from time to time, all the time. But, you know, you have to be, and I was just saying, preparation is confining, it's limiting, but you have to be in the place of confinement and limitation in order to get good education.
So talk to us about how this can apply to us now, because, you know, we saw in that business meeting last night, for Valleydale, this doesn't seem like a time of limitation, right? It feels like the sky is the limit, and yet the Lord is preparing us for something.
I think so. I think the limitation and the confinement is for us personally to be in the place of preparation. It's going to be a struggle for some folks to give. It's going to be a struggle for some folks to readjust their schedule and calendar in order to be in life group, in Bible study, in discipleship. You know, that's where the rub's going to come in. Is, am I willing to put myself in the place of preparation, like a D group, like life group, like services, being in the service, you know, being where I can study the Word, and then being in the place where I can take time and give to the service, give to being used, give to, like I was talking about, you know, we've got folks here with degrees on top of degrees, and yet they're watching the door. Yes. You know, they're opening the door on Sunday morning, or they're working
really
in the parking lot, or they're down there changing diapers in the nursery and holding babies, you know.
Well, I think we would both agree, though, that if you're not forced into that place of preparation, it's harder to get yourself there. It takes an extraordinary amount of discipline to say, I'm going to do this even though no one's forcing me to do it. I guess Joseph kind of had that advantage. He didn't choose to go to prison, right? The Lord put him in there.
Yep, you know.
But he took advantage of it once he was there.
That's the thing.
And he saw these opportunities coming.
That's exactly right. You know, he took a bad situation, and instead of just, you know, crying and being defeated and being depressed and dejected, what he does is he sees, what can I do? Well, you don't have anything. He's a foreigner in a foreign land. He's a teenager in a land full of adults. He's a Hebrew-speaking Hebrew in a land full of Egyptian-speaking Egyptians. And so, you know, he doesn't have anything. He's got less than, and then he ends up in prison, so he's a foreigner and a slave in a foreign country, and now he's in prison.
That's about as bad as it can get, just situational.
I mean, you have absolutely nothing. But what does he do? He ministers to the other people.
And the Lord was with him.
And I made a point yesterday, and I was thinking about that early this morning or late last night, I can't remember. But what I was thinking was this: I made the comment several times, you don't have to be gifted to do ministry. In other words, you don't have to have, I don't want to say there's not a gift of ministry.
There's a call to ministry.
There's a call to ministry. That's right. That's a good point. There's a call to ministry, and we're all called to ministry.
Yes, to some type. Yeah.
And to do ministry doesn't mean, well, I have to have a gift of music or the talent of speaking before people or a theological education or this or that or the other. To do ministry, you don't have to have giftedness. You just have to care about people. A willingness, yeah.
That's a really good point, and I'm glad that you that was part of your introduction almost. You were talking about how there's people around here that I'm sure they make great money doing big time jobs.
Yeah.
And then they come here and they're like, well, I'm going to help, like you were saying, changing diapers, that sort of thing, helping with parking. So what a great ministry that is. Hey, you had a really good gotcha moment yesterday with the people. Yeah, I thought you got them really good because you were just like, now remember who interpreted Joseph's dreams?
Yeah.
And everyone was like, Joseph. And you were like,
Nope.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't.
No, he didn't.
It was actually his brothers
Yeah.
and his father. People are always like, yeah, Joseph's the interpreter of dreams. Well, he is, but not until we get to,
Not until after he gets into prison.
40 and 41 is
Yeah.
when he starts interpreting,
Yeah.
which you're going to get into that this week.
I'm going to get into it.
I'm excited. You know how far in the chapter you're going yet?
Probably 1 through 8, but I'm not exactly certain because I haven't really. I pulled out and started looking at some stuff early this morning,
We'll see.
and we'll just see. Yeah.
You going anywhere this week? What's on the plate?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
No. I'm not preaching anywhere.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to go up to the mountains for a couple of days.
Great.
I've got to go check on some property up there, and then I'm just going to I'm going to work on a sermon, and I'm going to do some reading.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you because I know you wanted
But
to
I
pray
will
for
be
your
here
schedule.
for you to hold court tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning, yes, that's when we
It's
have our.
Kirkwood Court.
Yes, I stand at the front of the room and I just grill Pastor. I need that text now.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes.
Now.
Yes, Your Honor.
No need to call me Your Honor. Hey, that was a clutch Andy Griffith reference yesterday. Otis was my favorite character. Just him walking into the cell and hanging the keys back up. It's just,
Well, you remember the
excellent.
time they're locked out of the jail and they have to get Otis up? And he wakes up and gets out the jail.
I've actually
gets
seen
out
that
the cell and he goes to the door and opens the door. And then when he comes, he's got the key on a chain.
Yeah.
That night he's trying to get the key into the keyhole, and he's drunk and he's trying to get in there.
You already know
Only in Mayberry.
you know the great trivia about that actor, right? That played Otis.
Otis.
Because he was the voice of John Avery Whitaker in Adventures in Odyssey.
Yes,
the radio
he
show.
did a lot of voiceover.
Yeah.
A lot of
So
voiceover.
I remember my parents telling me that. I was like, a drunk guy was Whitaker. Anyway, that'll do it for today. Fun hanging out with you guys. We'll see you on Wednesday night. I'll see Pastor tomorrow morning when I hold court.
Yep.
And we'll see the Cowboys in the
Kirkwood Court.
playoffs in a couple years, I'm sure. Probably
Yeah.
not this year, but at some point.
No, it won't be this year.
Say goodbye, Pastor.
Goodbye, Pastor.